I'm Brandi. Kruse. Coming up today on unDivided, up to 6 years in prison. That's how much a GOP ballot observer is now facing as he awaits sentencing, all stemming from his refusal to wear a COVID mask in 2024. Plus, taxpayer funds being used to pressure political candidates, including judges, into supporting the trans agenda. And Elmo goes full Hitler, and you never go full Hitler. That and much more coming up today on unDivided. Remember, you can support our show for just $5 a month. That's how this show is possible. If you want to sign up to get access to exclusive content, go to undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com, and just click on the banner that says support the show. Hello and welcome to unDivided. I'm Brandi Kruse. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for your commitment to giving common sense a comeback. We have to start where we ended last week. I've been sick about this all weekend. We got done with Thursday's live show. About an hour later, we got news from Island County, Washington, that GOP ballot observer Tim Hazelo was convicted on 2 counts, one misdemeanor trespassing, the other one a felony for unlawful entry into a voting center. For those of you who might just be hearing about this or following it for the first time, because there's been a lot of growing attention nationally after his conviction on Thursday, a lot of anger about it, certainly amongst conservatives at least. So Tim Hazelo, I'll play the video in a moment, but he was the chair of the Republican Party in Island County, Washington. He was also a ballot observer. So you volunteer, both parties get to send people into the ballot counting room just to be able to make sure nothing shady is going on. And so in the days leading up to the November 2024 election, he was scheduled to go in as a ballot observer. But the auditor in Island County, Washington, instituted this asinine policy that they had to wear COVID masks. Yes, in 2024, in order to observe ballot counting from a safe distance, even, they had to wear masks. Tim Hazelo and other Republicans didn't believe that that was even lawful, that the auditor had the authority to make such a rule. And so they decided that they were going to go in and they were going to sign in as ballot observers, and they weren't going to wear a mask, and they were going to see what happens. Here's what happened to Tim Hazelo.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Miller?
What's your name?
Tim Hazelo.
Tim Hazelo?
Yeah, good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've met before.
So, tell me what's going on here.
I'm just observing my civil rights as the observer.
Okay, but as I know, they made a policy that you wear a mask while you're in
Which
here.
the RCW doesn't give them the authority to do so.
That's still a policy that's been set. You need to leave.
Are you going to write me a citation?
If I need to.
Then
Let's go. The charge is disorderly conduct.
gotcha.
Okay, you have a mandatory court appearance.
Okay.
Do you have any other questions for
No,
me? I'm going to
no.
ask you not to return here today.
I won't.
Or you can end up in jail.
I won't.
Okay.
Should I go sign out though?
What's that?
Because I have to sign in as an observer. Should I sign out?
I will escort you up there to sign out,
Okay.
and then you can be on
No,
your
that makes
way.
sense. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, no, you're not confused. This isn't communist China. This is the United States of America. And he gets 2 cops come in, escort him out over a COVID mask. Insane. Now, look, Tim Hazelo went in there knowing he was challenging this rule. And in fact, the purpose was, and you heard him there, are you going to cite me? He wanted to get cited for it. He did want to get cited for it. I think he probably didn't expect the citation at the time to be disorderly conduct, because as you've seen from the video, there was nothing disorderly about what happened there. But he wanted to and did ultimately pursue, which is in progress, a civil lawsuit against the county, essentially saying you can't hurt our ability to be ballot observers, particularly when clearly one side of the political aisle is less likely to be willing to wear a mask to observe ballots. And so he thought if he would need to be essentially cited or kicked out in order to have standing to be able to pursue a civil case. So he expected that. What he didn't expect is for a politically far left prosecutor who's on the record hating Trump supporters, wishing death on anti-maskers, to take what happened there in that video and turn it into a felony offense. As you know, the prosecutor, Greg Banks, ended up charging Tim Hazelo with trespassing and with unlawful entry into a voting center, which is a felony under Washington state law. And on Thursday, a jury of his peers, figure out how this happened, convicted Tim Hazelo. He's now awaiting sentencing, which could happen in a matter of days. He faces up to 6 years in prison Oh, yes. 6 years in prison over this. It's a miscarriage of justice. It is political prosecution. So we finally got a chance this morning, just before the show, to check in with Tim Hazelo. I've been in touch with him via text over the weekend. He's obviously very upset, although he's still determined to see all of this through. He wasn't in a good place where we could do a video interview with him, but we taped a phone call with him just before we came on today. Tim Hazelo, how are you doing, my friend?
Well, I have been better. Thanks for asking, Brandi. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, I was in touch with you throughout the process of trial and trial preparations last week, and you didn't seem so confident, to me at least. I mean, you definitely were worried. Where was that feeling coming from?
The biggest hard feeling I had that gave me the most strife was the fact that that the prosecution was so selective, that the rule was selectively held and acted on, and that we couldn't even bring any of that stuff up in the court. By the first day of deliberations in the court, my brain had already said, crap, we've lost this, because we couldn't talk about the whack that authorizes the auditor to do what she does. We couldn't talk about the law that we're being charged with, which just blows my mind. We couldn't talk about other people not wearing masks. And the list goes on. You covered it, actually, in your show on Thursday before I'd even talked to you about all the different discrepancies and reasons that the jury's not hearing the right stuff.
Yeah. You made a decision to take the stand. Was that a mistake?
Hindsight being 20/20, I think it might have been a mistake. But you look at it this way: if I didn't take the stand and I was convicted anyway, then I'd be upset that I didn't take the stand, right? Damned if you do, damned if you don't. I don't know, for lack of a better term. We thought we'd be able to get up there and get our message across, and we were just shut down at every move. I'll give you a real simple, for instance. So Austin, my attorney, asked me, had I ever heard of unauthorized access to a polling place prior to being charged with it? And before I could even say no, Banks had already objected to that question, and the judge had already said I'm not allowed to answer that question. So even the simplest little things like that, we weren't even allowed to talk about it.
Yeah, and that's really, I think, for me, there are some, and I've said, I mean, you went in there knowing that you were going to be violating this masking rule, and there was a part of you that wanted something to happen so you could ultimately challenge it, which I know there's a civil lawsuit moving forward in that regard. So to me, it's really the unlawful entry issue, because that's the felony. I don't think it's relevant to this case. Is there anything you did in signing in, any agreement you signed? Because I'm trying to get to how they got to you unlawfully entering when you actually, in fact, signed in. So did you enter under false pretenses?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, when I walked in, I actually asked if I had to sign the rules again in case they may have changed. Because the rules I signed on the 29th when I went down there to check on the other observers that had already signed to do this, those are the rules I signed, because you have to sign them before you go in. And I checked with the front desk and I said, hey, I'm here to observe. Do I need to re-sign the rule sheet? And he said, nope, you just sign in here on the log entry and go back there and observe the election. And that's exactly what I did. Once again, I was quiet and courteous. I didn't even talk to a poll watcher, nothing. I didn't talk to anybody. I just sat down.
Yeah, there was the prosecutor in this case is interesting for a lot of reasons. Of course, we've talked about his political bias against conservatives and Trump supporters and people who won't mask up. One of our viewers sent Mr. Banks an email after your conviction, basically, accusing him of lawfare. And the prosecutor, which this is so unusual, he sent a lengthy response back to just this random person. And he spent a lot of time, I mean, it was such a long email, trying to justify, what he did and the crime you were charged with. And in this email to this citizen, he says, Mr. Hazelo intentionally interfered with the administration of a presidential election. Is anything you did in the room that day, could it be construed as interfering with the administration of a presidential election?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, I was pretty sure Trump was going to win anyway. So why would I why would I even risk any of that, first and foremost? And second of all, my whole existence for the last 5 years in politics has rotated around election integrity. We just want it to be right. And I don't think the auditor's office was doing anything weird with the ballots. I think Island County does a pretty darn good job. But we have to make sure, and that's why we go to watch.
Yeah. So what happens now, Tim? You're facing sentencing. My understanding is you could be facing up to 6 years in prison based on the crime and the classification. I highly doubt, although, I doubted you were going to be convicted. So what do I know? So what happens from here?
We're going to put in some stays and some motions. We're going to look for some appeals. We want the court to have to dig further into this unauthorized access to a polling center law, because if you look at the legislative debates and history of this, it has nothing to do with what happened on that day. It has to do with sneaking in and destroying ballots or find a way to weasel your way into the electronics or something of that nature. And none of that happened, and nobody's even arguing that did happen. So what we need is the court to look at this law, the courts, the appeals courts, somebody outside of who prosecuted this and judged this in this particular instance, to determine whether that law even applies, because it does not. And at the furthest stretch of the imagination, it's hard to make it apply if you can explain the law and you know the law. And that was the problem. In the courtroom, we weren't allowed to talk about actual RCWs, actual laws. And that was very disturbing. Hopefully all that comes to light, and that's what we do. So we have to appeal it. There's no way around it. The big problem is the cost of appealing and having the right legal team to push the right issues and push the right buttons, and the time frame. We're on a 10-day clock, and it's not 10 business days. It's 10 days, period.
Yeah, and I know there's some kind of work behind the scenes to try to, figure out from a monetary perspective and legal team perspective. So maybe we'll have some updates on that in the days to come. Yeah. Tim, I was just sick about this all weekend. Really worried about you, worried about Tracy, who comes next. And there's a lot of national attention on this now. I can tell by this prosecutor's email to just this random citizen that he is feeling the heat, maybe as he should, but he also feels the need to have to justify it. And I'm reading the email. There's several mistruths in it, which I'll point out to viewers after I wrap up with you here. So here you have a prosecutor with this long history of political bias who's blatantly emailing what I would consider lies to a constituent about the case. So Tim, we'll talk to you again here in the coming days as you await your sentencing. And we're going to try to do everything we can to bring attention to this case. So hang in there.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I can't even express how I feel about it. And my wife, she watches you every day. And so she's pretty tore up about this whole thing, probably more so than me. I tell people all the time, you're not shooting at me, I'm not stressed out, but I'm kind of stressed out right now, and I'm not being shot at, literally.
Yeah, well, you guys aren't alone, as much as it might feel like that. And, I'm just hoping that common sense and rational thought prevail in this. And so we'll touch base with you soon, okay?
Perfect. I appreciate it. And everything you do just helps out immensely, and I appreciate it.
Yeah, just insane stuff. I will say he sounded a little better today than when I talked to him, I think Friday morning when I spoke to him. But look, felony is nothing to joke around about. And as much as he's, sticking to his guns and he really believes that what happened to him is wrong and that, this mask rule never should have been in place, there's a reality there. He requires a security clearance for his job. He's going to lose that unless this case is somehow overturned on appeal or something happens. That's really significant. And Tim isn't the only one in this situation. Remember, there's a woman named Tracy Abel who was also removed under the exact same circumstances from the exact same ballot counting office as Tim was. And Tracy also has something to lose. She's having the book thrown at her by this politically motivated prosecutor. I talked to her on Friday morning. She was very upset, worried, but still ready to see things through and not, she's not going to take a plea, even if the prosecutor wants her to. And she's risking losing volunteer hours at a local school. She loves it. She loves volunteering at her local school. She can't do it if she's a convicted felon. And again, we're talking about not wearing a mask in 2024. It's absolutely insane. So we're not going to let this go. It is getting increased national attention now, as it should. If this were a situation where they got cited with something, maybe even trespassed, maybe even told, hey, you can't come back in as ballot observers. We told you the rules. You didn't follow them. And then they pursued a civil case to challenge the masking rule. I wouldn't be as fired up about it because they knew what they were getting into. But no one could have ever predicted that this politically motivated Trump-hating prosecutor would turn this into a felony for these two individuals. I asked Tim Hazelo, I said, I'm just curious, do you have any other sort of criminal convictions that might, make it more likely that a judge goes with a high-end sentence? Like, no, this guy has no criminal history to speak of besides a few traffic things, which don't we all have a traffic thing? And this prosecutor, Greg Banks, is going to try to ruin their lives and upend their lives over this. It's wild. So I want to update you on one thing. So again, Greg Banks, one of the reasons primarily I believe this is politically motivated is not just because who in their right mind would charge these people with a felony, but he decided personally to prosecute these cases. As the elected prosecutor, which he acknowledged to us, he never does. But in this case, he felt very passionate about it. And maybe it's because he's a Trump hater. As we pointed out many times, he should have recused himself from this case because he's compared Trump supporters like Tim and Tracy to the KKK, called them racist bullies with second-grade intellects, said we have to cleanse society of their diseased thinking and then wish death on people who refuse to wear a mask. And this is the guy who we're supposed to believe is making these prosecuting decisions in the interest of justice and in good faith. So this Greg Banks guy, he's one weird hombre. Why did I call him an hombre? I don't think he's Hispanic. He's one weird dude. So when we were first breaking this story back, what was it, November, December of this year, when he threatened them, and when we got a hold of a letter he sent to both Tim and Tracy basically saying, if you don't plead guilty to a misdemeanor, I'm going to personally take this to trial as a felony. He threatened them. And we were reporting on that at the time, and we reached out, Nicole reached out, sent a long list of questions to the prosecutor's office. Should you recuse yourself? How can we expect that you're doing this fairly because of these past posts? Do the charges really fit the crime? And he would send us these lengthy emails, which we thought was very odd at the time. I used to cover crime and justice exclusively, and it was very unusual for an elected prosecutor in the midst of a case to provide lengthy statements to the media trying to justify their rationale. Very odd. Usually the response you'd get from a prosecutor is, hey, we don't talk about ongoing cases. We're gonna make our case in court. But he'd send us these 500-word responses trying to convince us that his motivations aren't political. We thought it was very strange. And apparently he has not given up on doing that. So not a surprise to me that he's being bombarded with emails over this, including from some of our viewers and listeners. And I would ask you guys to keep those emails respectful, as I always do. But we get forwarded an email response he sent one of our viewers. I won't say much about the viewer, just that they're a local pastor. And they decided to reach out to him to be critical of the decision to prosecute this as a felony. So I think to this viewer's surprise and to our surprise, Greg Banks again sends this guy this lengthy email the day after the jury verdict, trying to justify what he did, which to me, if you're working that hard to justify it, even to a random citizen, you know you did something wrong. You know you did something wrong. So I can't read the whole thing because it's so freaking long, but he sends this guy an email back, Greg Banks does, basically saying, I'm choosing to respond to you because he goes, I watched some of your church YouTube videos and I think you're a reasonable person, so I'm going to respond to you, which is just so weird. I'm going to read part of the response. Mr. Hazelo intentionally interfered with the administration of a presidential election and blatantly violated rules of conduct imposed by the elected county auditor. There is no proof that he blatantly interfered with the administration of a presidential election. People kept counting ballots. Police came in, told him to leave. He's like, okay. And then they went outside. He didn't blatantly interfere with the administration of a presidential election. That's just a lie at the worst, an over-exaggeration at the best. He goes on to say, those rules were designed to allow for the accurate, timely, reliable, and transparent administration of a very important election. Again, I don't understand how the masking rule is relevant to that. They were also designed to protect the elderly election staff who perform the tedious but vital work of running an election. Mr. Hazelo was given repeated opportunities to follow the rules or observe the election process unmasked from an adjacent room that would not put him in direct contact with election staff. He refused. Moreover, he insisted that he be charged with a crime and removed from the building. Eventually, he was granted his request, but not for lack of trying to get him to simply follow the rules that everyone else was following. I'm going to tear that apart in a second, but let me keep reading. I would like to, this is crazy. This is the elected prosecutor who just got a conviction trying to justify himself to a random citizen. He says, I would like to think that all Americans and all Washingtonians would be supportive of efforts to ensure elections are conducted properly. I believe in accountability, and I trust that my community would like to see that those who interfere with our elections are brought to justice. Think of that sentence, that those who interfere with our elections are brought to justice. Dude wouldn't wear a COVID mask in 2024. Who does this guy think he is? I would also like to think that all Island County residents would care about the health and well-being of the vulnerable election workers in their 70s, 80s, and 90s who lived through a COVID outbreak during their work in the August 2024 primary election. As a pastor, I trust that you also care about their well-being more than some of the commenters who have taken me to task, which is clearly talking about us and trying to sort of shame this pastor into agreeing with him because he's a man of God. So there's a lot to unpack in that. Clearly, though, he is working overtime to justify his actions. It tells me he knows that there is something that he needs to try to justify. But he talks at length about, don't you care about these elderly election workers? As we've pointed out many times, and I don't know if you can access the picture, Nicole, I didn't put it in there. One of those elderly election workers, an old man, was caught on video the day after Tim Hazelo was removed, not wearing a mask himself, while counting ballots. So how worried can the elderly election workers be and the auditor's office be about their health and well-being in the administration of the election and their safety and security and the sanctity of the election if this dude's not even wearing a mask? He wasn't brought out by police. He wasn't brought up on felony charges. Kind of a moot point, isn't it? But you understand in this response, as he's trying to convince this random citizen that he's not politically motivated, his response is dripping with political motivation. It's dripping with his bias about COVID mandates and masking. And his belief that prosecuting Tim Hazelo and ultimately Tracy Abel with felonies is vital to protect the sanctity of elections? It's wild stuff. And let me be clear, this law on the books that he prosecuted them under as a felony, which prohibits unlawful entry, should exist. It's a good law. We need to have it. If someone breaks into an election center, if someone barges in and tries to stop the counting, if they go in and try to steal or destroy ballots, it should be a felony. But no one in their right mind should believe that this is that. So it's crazy. So Tim's awaiting sentencing, could face actual jail and or prison time over this. And then Tracy Abel is up next with her trial set to begin in August. And this guy, Greg Banks, he clearly shouldn't be within 100 yards of elected office. But he absolutely should not be prosecuting these cases given his clear political bias against Trump supporters and against people who refuse to wear a mask, who he wished death upon. Common sense stuff, people. common sense stuff. I know I've heard from a lot of you who want to help Tim and Tracy. We don't really share GoFundMes on this show. There's a lot of reasons for that. But I think if they've started one, they're more than welcome to put it in the comments of the posts that we put these videos out on. It's just GoFundMes get a little hazy and everybody asks us to talk about them on the show if we end up doing them. So that's just the reason for that. But I know that there's going to be some opportunities to do that. And I will say there is some work behind the scenes to make sure that they both have the best possible representation moving forward to the appeal stage for Tim and for Tracy as she goes to trial. So wild stuff. Literally sick to my stomach over it this week. And I almost cried on Friday talking to Tracy, just like, oh my gosh, this poor woman. Okay, we've got a great exclusive story next because we're just full of exclusives here on the show. So you probably thought, Brandi, aren't we done talking about Pride Month? Never. Because in the city of Tacoma, Pride extends out of June into July. And on Saturday, they had Tacoma Pride. Why they had it July 12th as opposed to in June while everyone else was celebrating Pride, I don't know. But why not extend it into July? So Tacoma Pride 2025. Big festival they have in Tacoma. I'm curious if any of you went or attended any of the festivities, because I certainly have some questions about what it was like for reasons that will become clear. So I got sent this tip from, I guess I can't really give too much information on who it was because it'll give it away. But suffice it to say, they received this email and thought it was quite fascinating and decided to forward it on to me. And what the email is, and I'll read most of it to you, it's from the elected Pierce County executive, Ryan Mello, a Democrat. It also includes the Speaker of the House, Lori Jenkins, a Democrat, as well as some other government employees, Pierce County workers, and legislative staffers. So this is very much a government email. And Ryan Mello, who is gay, and Lori Jenkins is gay as well. I guess that's relevant to this, certainly since we're talking about Pride. So here's the email, and I want to read it to you. It says, "Hello, South Sound elected officials and candidates for public office. We are 4 days away from Tacoma Pride. Please disregard this email if you can't attend. This email includes final details and serves as a reminder and additional invite for those who have not yet RSVP'd. Tacoma's Pride Festival runs for the entire month of July, and this year we will be celebrating in Tacoma's Wright Park on Saturday, July 12th. Over 10,000 people are expected to turn out throughout the day. If you can attend, we ask that you please RSVP to this Pierce County staffer. If you have already RSVP'd, no further action is needed. We would like to invite you to stand with us on stage and be introduced as a member of or ally of the LGBTQ plus community at the street festival on Saturday." Interesting. Okay, keep that in mind. "Seeing the strength of the LGBTQ plus community and allied candidates and elected officials on stage has always been a very powerful moment, and this year will be no different, especially as we stare down continued attacks on the trans community and anti-LGBTQ plus legislation spreading quickly in state after state. On the day of the festival, please check in, blah, blah, blah. During your check-in, you will be asked to sign the statement attached here, indicating your unwavering support for the protections of the LGBTQ plus community, privacy, and reproductive freedom. Please note, if you are a sitting judge or judicial candidate, we ask that you sign the LGBTQ plus statement of support for judges. Both versions are attached. Again, this can be done day of if you attend the festival in person. Okay, follow along with me here. So here you have an elected official, Ryan Mello, the Pierce County executive, from his official government account, as well as the Speaker of the House, Lori Jenkins, from her and to her official legislative email address. And they're talking about trying to organize a group of elected officials and political candidates to go to Tacoma Pride and be introduced on stage during the Pride Festival as either allies or members of the LGBTQ plus community. Now, if that were the only part of the story, I'd still think it was completely inappropriate. This is something that if Ryan Mello and Lori Jenkins want to organize and attend, they should be doing on their private email addresses. They absolutely, especially since it involves political candidates and giving political candidates a platform to talk to potential voters, they absolutely should not be using their government emails. So it would be a story even if that's where it ended. But it goes further. I referenced it there at the end. In order for them to be introduced on stage at the Pride Festival, again, a couple days ago on Saturday, these political candidates and elected officials, including judges, had to sign a statement of support. Okay? So I've got the statements of support, a copy of both, that the candidates, elected officials, and the judicial judges would have to sign. Let's go over them. This is in order for them to participate in this event that is clearly, and this effort that's clearly being organized through government means, taxpayer funds, government email accounts. So if you are an elected official or you're a political candidate and you wanted to be introduced on stage as an ally or a member of the LGBTQ community, you had to attest to the following. We, the undersigned, support and affirm the rights of all LGBTQ plus people to live as their authentic selves without discrimination in the workplace, at school, in their personal lives, or in public. This includes a steadfast commitment to defending marriage equality, protecting the rights of trans youth and families to seek gender-affirming care to live as their authentic selves, and all other current protections under law. In recognition of the intersectionality of reproductive justice rights and the LGBTQ plus community, we also support and affirm the right for any person to exercise autonomy over their body and make the reproductive healthcare choices that best support their health and well-being. So in order, again, this is being run by the elected Pierce County executive and the Speaker of the House, Lori Jenkins, and they, in their official capacities, are giving political candidates a potential platform at Pride to reach potential voters. But first, they have to sign and attest to supporting gender mutilation of children, supporting without, I guess, exception, abortion rights, marriage equality, etc., etc., etc. I'll read the judge one in a moment because it's a little bit different. So think about this. So now, in their official capacities, using their government emails, they are basically weeding out candidates who they don't like politically in order to gift political candidates who they do like a platform that the others are not going to receive. And they're doing it all in their official taxpayer-funded capacities using their government email addresses. I would also note, and we've reached out for comment, and I'll talk to you about some of the questions I've asked. I would also note that there are plenty of political candidates who believe in some of that stuff, but not all of it. So, for instance, if you're a member of the gay community and you're running for office, but you don't support gender mutilation of children, well, you can't be introduced at Tacoma Pride. So there's a purity test element of this where you have to support every single aspect of our LGBTQ plus agenda in order to be given this platform that we're extending to you as elected officials in our official capacity. This is the stuff PDC violations are made of. So the judge one is even worse to me because when you're a judge, you're supposed to judge every case on the merits, and you're only supposed to pledge a commitment to what? What is the only thing as a judge that you should be pledging a commitment to? The Constitution of the United States and the state of Washington. The only thing. But in order to be introduced as a judicial candidate at Tacoma Pride, you also have to sign this statement of support. As a judicial officer, I recognize that a wide diversity of litigants, attorneys, staff, witnesses, jurors, and members of the public appear in my courtroom, including members of the LGBTQ plus community. I commit that my courtroom will respect people and administer justice in a neutral, non-discriminatory way. I will intervene if neutrality is breached or discrimination occurs. I affirm the deepest level of commitment to achieving justice by ending racism. And then it says, I acknowledge and will follow as precedential the United States Supreme Court cases, and he lists them, which is fascinating to me because, for instance, it has It's got all these cases about like marriage equality, for instance, finding sodomy laws unconstitutional, LGBTQ laws. So it uses all of this precedent that takes the side of LGBTQ plus individuals and leaves out any other precedent that does not, and tells these judges to attest the fact that these are the cases. This is the precedent that they pledge to follow. Isn't that crazy? So I am working, and we will do a PDR, to get a list, since they did all of this through their government email addresses, of every single judge or judicial candidate who threw their credibility out the window and their ability to be considered fair and impartial out the window to sign this in order to be introduced on a stage at Pride. And we'll also file a public disclosure request for a copy of the LGBTQ plus statement of support for other political candidates and elected officials. So if that's where the story ended, well, that would be enough too. Because there's no way in hell they should be doing any of this from their government email addresses. As the executive of Pierce County, who is supposed to represent everyone, what about religious people who have a religious objection to same-sex marriage, but they still support gay people, who have a religious problem with abortion? So they can't participate at all. And then they're at a disadvantage, right? It's crazy. So that's all that is bad. But then here, question about your taxpayer money. So I looked, and Tacoma Pride is put on by an outside entity. It's not like the city of Tacoma is responsible for organizing, creating the Tacoma Pride event, or Pierce County. However, if you look under their sponsors, there's a whole list of title sponsors, Ruby sponsor, Emerald sponsor, all this stuff. Pierce County was both an Emerald sponsor and a Ruby sponsor. Where does Pierce County's money come from? Oh, you. So if you're a citizen and you don't support gender mutilation, and you don't support, for religious reasons, same-sex marriage or abortion, well, too bad. Because Pierce County used your money to be both an Emerald sponsor and a Ruby sponsor of Tacoma Pride. How much did they spend? Well, we did some sleuthing, found the form that lists the sponsorship opportunities and the amount that you'd have to spend. Ruby sponsor is $10,000 and an Emerald sponsor is $5,000. So we can only assume, based on that Pierce County used $15,000 in your taxpayer funds to support Tacoma Pride, whether you believe in what's being pushed there or not. It doesn't matter. And then they use their government email addresses to try to guilt political candidates into agreeing and pledging support for their radical trans agenda. How is this even allowed? How is a dime of taxpayer funds legally allowed to be used for something like this? Now, last night we reached out to Pierce County Executive Ryan Mello and the Speaker of the House, Lori Jenkins. We asked them some very obvious questions. Why are you using your government email addresses to do this? What happened if a political candidate or judge was not willing to sign one of these forms? Were they then excluded and not allowed to be introduced on stage? We asked them what message this sends to their constituents who maybe, again, for religious or other reasons, don't agree with same-sex marriage, don't agree with child mutilation, don't agree with abortion. And I say this as someone who's pro-choice. Even as someone who's pro-choice, I don't want my taxpayer money being used, one, to fund abortions, or two, to try to coerce political candidates into signing a declaration, especially judges, that they support abortion no matter what. So we've asked a long list of questions to get them to explain this. I also really do believe that this is grounds for multiple PDC violations, given the fact it involves political candidates. But it just shows you how deep this runs and how emboldened they feel. They probably see nothing wrong with this. They see nothing wrong with, as elected officials, using their taxpayer-funded offices, employees, emails, jobs, computers, whatever it is, to try to give an advantage to political candidates, give them time on stage and attention and name recognition based on whether they will sign off on a radical gender ideology. They probably see nothing wrong with that. And Nicole, last check, no response yet from Ryan Mello or Lori Jenkins?
No response.
Shocking. Yet. I'm shocked, I tell you what. So I'm not going to file a PDC violation because that's not my job. But if any of you would like to file a PDC violation, I am more than happy to send you the content that we've gathered. And we will update you guys if we get a response from either Ryan Mello or Lori Jenkins. Totally emboldened to spend $15,000 of your money supporting something that they ideologically agree with, even if you don't. All right. Wow. We have a lot more on the show today, including homelessness is not just worst in places like Seattle or California. It's also growing in the city of Portland and the surrounding areas. And you guessed it, that's despite the fact that they're spending a boatload of money to fight it. We'll have that coming up next. First, if you are a landlord considering becoming a landlord, a really great way to be introduced to what's happening in Washington State's housing climate, which isn't great, of course, is to go to the Engage conference that the Rental Housing Association of Washington is holding at Bellevue Maidenbauer Center, October 22nd to 23rd. This is their full housing conference. It's a ton of fun. I'm going to be speaking at it. You learn a lot. I'm going to be talking about how the media covers housing issues. Hint, not great. Not fair. But, you know, even if you're not a landlord, but for instance, maybe you're a developer or a builder, maybe you're thinking about being a landlord or getting some rental properties, maybe to help in retirement, or if you're just interested in housing policy in general, this is a really fun conference to go to. So if you'd like to sign up for that, go to rhawa.org, rhawa.org. That's also a good opportunity to sign up to become a member of RHA. It's like $260 a year. And if you're a small to mid-sized landlord, totally worth it. They can help you navigate this complex political environment that we're in, make sure that you have all the forms, you're checking all the right boxes, and to make sure you stay on the right side of Governor Bob Ferguson. You know, don't want to run afoul of him. So rhawa.org, rhawa.org, become a member today and sign up for the Engage conference. I will see you there. Okay, so this story came across my timeline. Not a particular surprise, but I think it speaks to the fact that up and down the West Coast, it is policy failure, certainly, that has led to the homeless crisis being so bad. But it is also this endless thirst from non-government entities to continue to get your money that keeps people living in filth and squalor and despair. This segment is brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Make sure you sign up for their newsletter to be alerted to opportunities to do just that. Okay, this story came across my timeline from KGW in Portland. Homelessness spending at all levels, federal down to local, topped $700 million for the Portland metro area in the 2023-2024 fiscal year, a newly released report found. You guys, Portland's not even a major city. Like, it's a big city, but it's not the biggest. $700 million in taxpayer funds? Almost $1 billion to deal with the homelessness crisis? Because that's how bad it's gotten. And you know where this is going because you know eventually I'm going to tell you, I'll just ruin the surprise now, that despite that spending, homelessness is worse, okay? But let me get there step by step, okay? And this is what I'm going to talk about in Portland. It's true for Washington State. It's true for Seattle. It's true for San Francisco. It's true for LA. It's true for the rest of California as well. There's a reason for that. So this report from Eco Northwest, a study done, looked at all the spending and the results of it, etc. $724 million in total expenditures on literal and imminent risk homelessness in Tri-County Portland in fiscal year 2024. So that means like trying to prevent people from falling into homelessness, like if you rental voucher or something to prevent somebody from becoming homeless. So that includes that kind of money as well. All right, where is that compared to 2023? So 2022 to 2023? They spent $531 million in 1 year. 1 year difference. $200 million. They spent $200 million more in fiscal year 2024 than in fiscal year 2023 when they spent $531 million. That is insane. That is insane. What do we get for that? Well, let's look into here. I think it's when you want to talk about this study and sort of what we're going to learn from it. And gosh, maybe this is a study that's finally looking into, hey, here's how much we're spending and here's the results. And, we'll show you the data and you can make a decision for yourself. But clearly that's not good. So we're thinking, okay, what does that tell us? This is a literal note in the study. Total expenditure amounts should not be compared across years due to differences and improvements in reporting and analysis. So the people who did this study literally didn't want people like me to read the two numbers I read you and make some sort of assumption about it. Well, I hate to break your heart, Eco Northwest. I'm going to make an assumption about it. And it's not really an assumption because it's based on years and years and years of these cities spending more money only to have more people be homeless. So baked into the study is this line that they don't want us to glean anything from this information. If you don't want us to glean anything from this information, why did you do a study? Isn't the purpose of studies to get us to have data and information that we can then learn and glean things from? They don't want that, right? Crazy. So as you guessed, this is from Axios Portland. This is from 2023. Homelessness in Oregon hits record high in 2023. So it says Oregon had the highest percentage of unsheltered, unaccompanied youth experiencing homelessness in January 2023. That statistic increased by about 1/3 between 2022 and 2023. So here, article from 2023, they're explaining not only was there a jump in 2022 to 2023, but 2023 had record levels of homelessness. It said the state saw the second highest total percentage of people experiencing homelessness who were unsheltered. So in the 2023 numbers, they were estimating there was around 13,000 to 20,000 homeless residents in 2023, okay? That's a big gap, by the way. That's the best guess you can give us. 13,000 to 20,000. So that's already pretty bad, right? Let's jump ahead to 2024. This is from Oregon Capital Chronicle based on their latest counts there. The Department of Housing and Urban Development's annual point-in-time count conducted in January 2024 found 22,875 people experiencing homelessness. So even if we were to assume that in 2023, the actual number of homeless was the high end, because they estimated 13,000 to 20,000. So let's just say it was 20,000. A year later, you have at least 3,000 more homeless, could be as much as 13,000 more homeless, and you're spending $200 million additional dollars in that time frame. So spending more money for more people to be homeless. Okay? I know the report said don't glean anything from that. Don't make any assumptions, but you do what you want. Here is something fascinating. So Kevin Dahlgren, who works with the homeless population down in Portland, this study comes out, and you can kind of do the math in your head when you hear those numbers, right? Wait a second. They're spending $700 million. There's about 22,000 people who are homeless. Man, that's a lot of money per homeless person. Kevin Dahlgren thought so too. So he decided to go out, find a homeless dude, and ask him about it.
Social services spent $97,000 per homeless person to get you guys off the streets. 97,000. Yeah.
That can't be true because there's more and more people becoming homeless on the streets.
Yes, homelessness increased over the last year.
Yeah, I know. I see new faces almost every other day.
So then where the hell's the money going?
Honestly, I heard something last year. They said last year, maybe $1 to $2 million came up missing, and I don't think $1 to $2 million comes up missing. Somebody took that shit, and they say we're the problem, but yet they want to take away our resources to help fix the problem.
But
That doesn't make any damn sense.
And that's an obscenely high number per homeless person, which means $97,000 was applied to helping you off the streets.
No, they don't give a shit about us.
So how much money do you think was spent on you in the last year?
Zero. None. I mean, well, okay, maybe $50 on some, burgers and hot dogs that they came and, gave us in the park. Other than that, none.
Is there a better video that exists about the homeless crisis anywhere on the internet? I challenge you to find it. For those of you who listen to the podcast today, you see his brain trying to come to terms with the fact that around $90,000 technically should be allotted to help get him off the streets. And the math isn't mathing. Besides some burgers and hot dogs, no one's helped him with anything. He's actually a pretty smart, articulate guy. I'm sure clearly he has some issues that have led him into that situation. And then he says, Kevin Dahlgren tells him, and homelessness got worse, by the way. He says, I know. I don't need you to tell me that. I see new faces on the street every day, he says. And yet we have politicians who can't seem to grasp this reality. I mean, remember when we broke the news that Governor Jay Inslee had launched this right-of-way initiative where he was going to go clean up all the tents along I-5, and we did the math, boop, 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 and found out they were spending like $1 million per person to get them out of homelessness? So the money's not going to him. It's not going to help him get off the streets. Where's it going? It's padding the pockets of the government bureaucracy and the nonprofit that is made up of Democrats, cronies, and allies. $700 million worth of it for the homeless crisis to only get worse. I saw this post over the weekend from Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal of Washington. And at first I read it and I thought, well, I disagree with that. But now reading it with all of this context, I agree with it quite a bit. She said, homelessness is a policy failure, not a personal failure or crime. And usually I'd say, well, no, I mean, people are on the streets because they're addicted to drugs or they have a mental illness or something. But you know what? At this point, homelessness continuing to get worse is a policy failure. And you know what, Congresswoman? It's your policy failure. It's the policy failure of your fellow progressives and Democrats who continue to take a hands-off approach to substance abuse, who continue to take a hands-off approach to getting people out of dangerous encampments and into a place where they will actually get help for the underlying reason that they're homeless. And it's a policy failure because it prioritizes and suggests that their ability to tackle this issue is directly related to the amount of money that you're willing to give them. And it's not. The amount of money they spend on homelessness has zero correlation with the ability to actually solve homelessness. If anything, it's inverted. The more money you spend, the worse the crisis gets. Because the government and the nonprofits that are taking in that $700 million a year for just one American city, they will do anything they can do to keep that money coming in. And the only way in this instance to keep the money coming in is to make sure that the problem continues to get worse. And if you do not see that by now, if you do not believe that the homeless industrial complex is a real thing, then the only assumption that I can make is you are content with people living on the streets in filth and squalor and dying in the throes of addiction. And that is shameful. That segment was brought to you in partnership with our friends over at Future 42. Turn your frustration into action at future42.org. Go there, make sure you sign up for their newsletter to be alerted to opportunities to do just that. All right, we've of course got to talk about immigration and everything that happened over the weekend. Oh my gosh, Donald Trump, he is evil. He is an evil, evil man, because I'll tell you what, if unaccompanied minors want to work in a marijuana field, they ought to be able to do that. Let's talk about it in our segment, Unbelievable. So you probably saw all this unfolding, and it was wild. You got the news media, and the helicopters are out, and all the Democratic politicians. Oh my God, children are running in the fields. And Donald Trump, he's carrying out a mass raid of our farm workers who are just picking the produce that we need to live our lives. Here's what Gavin Newsom said on X, with a video accompanying it of, like tear gas, I guess, happening or something. Farm workers running around. He says kids running from tear gas, crying on the phone because their mother was just taken from the fields. Trump calls me new scum, but he's the real scum. And then in the hours that followed this, good one, Gavin, more posts emerged from Democrats saying that this was a raid on like a strawberry field or a farm field of some kind. And then the truth comes out. This was a weed operation, a legal one. This was a marijuana grow, okay, which fine, it's legal. Somebody's got to tend to the buds, okay? So this was a marijuana grow, not like how it was characterized that these are farm workers picking strawberries for your table,
like
okay?
Kids picking berries
Weed,
as a summer gig.
Oh, it's fine.
Oh, I just wanted some blueberries.
Yes, no. Weed grow. And over 300 people, according to DHS, who were working there, were not legally authorized to do so. And in addition to that, there were around a dozen unaccompanied minors, illegal unaccompanied minors. If you're wondering where they all disappeared to, well, apparently some of them are working at a marijuana grow operation. So this is from ABC 7. Over 300 arrested in immigration raid at cannabis farms near Camarillo, DHS says. Secretary Kristi Noem says, I was just given an update on Thursday's operation at the marijuana facility in California. Law enforcement rescued 14 children from potential forced labor, exploitation, and trafficking. They arrested 319 illegal aliens. The ICE agents faced assaults, violence, and even bullets fired at them. Yes, there was a video of someone with a gun turning around, firing it in the direction of ICE agents. She says, thank you to the brave men and women of ICE and CBP. This is quickly becoming one of the largest operations since President Trump took office. And in fact, CBP Commissioner Rodney Scott posted an image of these preteens and teenagers who were found working at this facility, illegal, unaccompanied. Says these are the juveniles found in the marijuana facility, almost all unaccompanied, one as young as 14. California, are you ready to partner with us to stop child exploitation? And look, I think I need to know more about where they came from, the circumstances under which they came across the border. Are they the victims of forced labor or labor trafficking? And clearly this marijuana grow operation employing at least 319 people with fraudulent documents, or they didn't check for documents or whatever it is and didn't know that they've got kids there as young as 14 that are in the country illegally and think twice because again, it's a legal marijuana grow. Let's see here. And then if we want to talk about the kinds of people who were arrested, because we're going to get to how the media spun this as like a sad sob story. Let's see. There was one illegal alien who was apprehended at this marijuana facility. Turns out he'd previously been sentenced to 7 years for kidnapping and attempted rape with a prior conviction for attempted child molestation. And that's the guy who was working at the same farm as those kids, one who is 14 years old. And we've got Gavin Newsom out here. Oh my gosh, this is a horrible sight. How dare Donald Trump? He's scum. Well, Gavin, he just got a kidnapper, attempted rapist, and child molester off the streets of your state. Don't you think you should be thanking him? Don't you think you should be thanking him for finding some of the unaccompanied minors who came across the southern border under President Biden and then disappeared into the interior with who knows who around them and what motivations? Be it forced labor, or you don't think some of them are being sex trafficked? But no, it's all about politics. Can't celebrate this and say, oh my gosh, we're so glad that the federal government found this guy. We're so glad that the federal government found these kids. No, it's all sob story. Now, you know the facts of the situation now, right? the facts of the situation. Here's how Fox 12 Oregon characterized this. So there's one of these farm workers who fled from ICE, right? And he fell off a greenhouse roof and he ended up being hospitalized and then he ultimately died. But he fell off the greenhouse roof in his effort to flee from ICE, okay? Fox 12 Oregon. He's the first person to die in one of the Trump administration's aggressive anti-immigration operations. Whoever wrote that should be fired immediately. They won't be, of course. But the bias that's dripping from that headline for what we're supposed to believe is a straight news organization. Anti-immigration operations. How is that an anti-immigration operation? It's an anti-illegal immigration. Donald Trump's wife is an immigrant. He's not anti-immigrant. He's anti-illegal immigration. And then to paint this sob story of this farm worker fell from a greenhouse roof during a chaotic ICE raid. Well, he did run, and he ran off a roof, and that's sad. I don't think anyone deserves to die, but ultimately, is that more ICE's fault or more his fault? But I mean, think of that headline, aggressive anti-immigration operations. And look, I have room in my head and in my heart and on this show to talk about what you feel, what I feel are maybe some failures to execute when it comes to President Trump's mass deportations. For instance, ICE agents have daily quotas that they have to meet, and I think those quotas have forced them to carry out some of these more unpopular enforcement actions that have been a little less planned out and more chaotic. I don't like the idea of a quota, if not for any other reason. I think it actually makes the job of ICE agents more difficult and more dangerous and less predictable. So that's one thing. If I could chat with Tom Homan, I would say the quota thing. I don't understand the quota thing. And I'm sure there are other immigration enforcement actions across the country that I would say, is that really what we need to be prioritizing? But to paint what happened at this marijuana grow as anything other than a resounding success and an unlawful attack on men and women who are trying to keep our country safe, who got shot at, it is just insane to me. And then there's this from CNN. So Abby Phillip has her own show, and it's kind of a roundtable type thing. And one of the guests on it was Jillian Michaels. Listen to the extent that Abby Phillip is trying to find ways to justify illegal child labor at a marijuana grow.
They also don't want to learn that there are a bunch of kids there that are undocumented or unaccompanied, and they think this is crazy talk, and we should be focusing on that. For one thing, how did those kids get there?
Well, I just want to add one thing. We do have to go, but the UFW, the United Farm Workers, put out a statement about this. They said the UFW can confirm farm workers were critically injured yesterday during chaotic raids in Ventura County, California. Others, including U.S. citizens, remain totally unaccounted for. Many workers, including U.S. citizens, were held by federal authorities at the farm for 8 hours or more. U.S. citizen workers report only being released after they were forced to delete photos and videos of the raid from their phones. They also added that farm work is exempted from child labor laws. So
you're telling me undocumented?
I'm not saying the undocumented. I'm not talking about the
marijuana farm.
I'm not talking about the undocumented part, but according to this statement, in this country, not just at farm, not at marijuana farms, at all
semantics.
Farms.
Look at the reality of what we're talking about. How did
an
unaccompanied, undocumented 14-year-old
in the
middle of the day?
I believe, and many people might believe, children should be subject to child labor laws.
Absolutely.
But it's true in this country that when it comes to agricultural work, they're not. And that includes marijuana farms. So the legality of their status is a separate issue, but the fact of children being there is not actually something that is necessarily illegal.
I have a really hard time believing
So there's that. So it's not unusual for there to be teenagers working in a farm.
A 14-year-old can work at a marijuana growing?
It doesn't matter whether it's a marijuana farm or an apple farm.
Yes, it does.
Okay?
Yes, it does.
It's agriculture. They're not smoking
if that's
marijuana.
the law, that's outrageous.
They're cultivating it.
The
point is, this incident, and we're still learning a lot more about it, was very dangerous and put a lot of people, including ICE officers and those immigrants, in danger.
Federal law enforcement agents.
I agree with you, but the tactics are producing chaos and violence, and I think that is one of the things that's caused
that you're talking
people
about.
to.
Who
that's
attacked first? That's my question.
We don't know.
Wow. So it's ICE agents, their own fault they're being shot at. It's their own fault. It's their tactics. The tactic of trying to enforce laws that are on the books in this nation. Is there any way, Abby Phillip, that they could carry out that kind of enforcement action that you would be okay with? Something tells me probably not. And it wouldn't have been a violent, dangerous situation if the illegal aliens working in that field did not make it so. And the length that they'll go to, and this just tells you there's nothing that Donald Trump does that they won't try to spin as a negative. The lengths she's going to try to justify the fact that there are teens, including a 14-year-old, working in a marijuana grow, and we don't know where they came from. We don't know where they're living. We don't know who they're living with. We don't know where their family is. We don't know anything about them, and that doesn't concern her. What concerns her more is the fact that Donald Trump went there and found them. I mean, people always say on the internet, you don't hate the media enough. I don't want to hate the media. I don't want to hate anyone. Except like murderers and pedophiles and stuff. I don't want to hate, maybe even Bob Ferguson. I don't want to hate anyone, Jay Inslee. But, I mean, at the end of the day, the media is responsible for so much of the division happening in our country, so many of the lies that are manipulating the minds of the electorate. It's hard not to feel this like deep resentment towards them. Wild stuff. All right. I would say let's get on a lighter note by talking about Elmo, but Elmo went full Hitler, so meh. Before we get there, our friend Wes Jones at sellwithwes.com is the guy that you want to call if you're trying to sell your home for whatever reason. Maybe you're moving across the street, moving across the state, or moving across the country. Wes Jones has been a real estate agent in our area for a really long time. He knows the market like the back of his hand. He's just a great guy to work with. His communication is top notch. And the marketing material that Wes Jones and Associates puts out, I mean, you can't compare it to anything else. You just look at some of their listings compared to other listings, and they are night and day. So if you're thinking about selling your home, do this. Go to sellwithwes.com, use their home value calculator to see how much your home is worth. It might be worth more than you think. And then if you're thinking, okay, I want to carry this on, talk to Wes, get a free market analysis so you can know kind of how your home is positioned, what the market is doing, etc. And then you guys can go from there. So sellwithwes.com, sellwithwes.com. It is simply a better way to sell your home. All right, in some national news before we get to Hitler Elmo. So on Sundays with Subscribers yesterday, we had a great interview with our friend Allie Bradley. Allie Bradley is a border correspondent for News Nation. I mean, she's one of the best reporters in the country covering the situation, not only on the southern border, which she covered extensively for a long time, but now as it's moved into the interior of the country, President Donald Trump's deportation efforts, the resistance of those deportation efforts. Great interview. Highly recommend subscribing and going and watching the entirety of it, because she just really takes this personally. I mean, this is someone who she spent time like traveling with hordes of migrants up through Central America and then watched all of this unfold on the southern border. And as we discussed, you know, she, and on this show and on News Nation, she tried to get this message out to Americans of all political stripes that, look, if this mass illegal migration continues, and then President Trump gets in and does what he says he's going to do, this is going to be a chaotic situation. This border crisis is going to explode in our cities and in our states if more people don't speak up about the truth of what's happening at the southern border. And of course, Democrats wanted to cover it up. You know, there was a presidential election that took priority over it. And so now we're seeing really and I will say it is chaotic. But I mean, the only reason why we have mass deportations is that there was mass illegal migration. It's the chicken before the egg sort of situation. So here's part of my conversation with News Nation's Allie Bradley. Yes, what we're seeing now is an unprecedented immigration enforcement effort, but it was preceded by an unprecedented flood of illegal immigration. When you were covering that aspect of it, did you ever imagine what we'd be seeing right now?
I feared a little bit because I'm like if, you know, you gotta can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. But Trump was very honest for the 4 years he was running, right? He was saying, I'm going to remove these people. I'm going to remove these people. So it was hard to watch Congress not act in the first 2 years that the Democrats did have power, that they could have made economic migration a law or done something, because asylum for economic purposes does not qualify. And that's what we saw. That was 99.9%. They said, we're leaving nothing, trying for something, worst case scenario, go back to nothing. And so I knew what Trump had planned. And I knew that we were going to see what we were seeing. I even did radio interviews and said, it's going to get hard. It's going to be people that it's going to be people who go to your church. Put your head down, because they're saying right now, if you came in illegally, if you're here without documentation, you're going to be removed. And so the writing was on the wall, right? There was no secret. The Trump administration doesn't generally say something and then not try it, at least try. And this is the try we're seeing right now, right? To meet that 3,000 threshold, they need to carry out the biggest deportation that we've seen. They have to beat Eisenhower's 1.3 million. So we'll see if they get there. But the reality is, if you look at the control that the Biden administration did have, they invited 11 million people into the country. They let them into their house. They knew what Trump was going to do. Him and Jill walked out the front door, locked the door, set it on fire, and said, good luck. Yeah. And that's where we're at. And these individuals that came in, they thought they had a chance. They were sold a bag of goods and they bought it, man. They were told come, and they came. And then the Trump administration says, you got to go. There are some migrants that I still talk to that came in the open border. And it's hard because I know them. And, they're telling me they're just trying to keep their paperwork in order. They're just trying to go through their court hearings. If they're in asylum proceedings, they're going to go to their court hearings. They're going to do what they can. And in the meantime, they're going to keep their head down, and that's the reality. So it's tough to cover this full circle, because we screamed from the rooftops. Look at this. There were 302,000 people that crossed in December of 2023. That was when we saw 12,000 people in a single day across both borders. And it's like, we saw that. What did you think I was telling you about? Yeah. I was telling you about fun things. I was telling you about things that could impact us later. Yeah. And now we're at later. And so it's frustrating from where I sit, because I tried to tell people, and it's frustrating when crimes are committed by illegal immigrants, because I feel partially responsible that I wasn't loud enough.
No.
There are people that my friends have lost. And I'm like, dang it, man, I tried. I tried to be that voice and to tell people what happened, and it just didn't stop it. And now other lives are being impacted, and it wasn't stopped. And so it sucks to sit there and to know what was going to happen and to know what was happening. And people just refused to hear it. And now they're mad. But they weren't mad back then. And that's interesting.
Yeah, I agree with her. News Nation's Allie Bradley. I mean, she's just so passionate about this issue, and she's covered all facets of it. And it is, it's a point that has to be made. Look, if you're mad about what's happening and the deportations and raids that are happening, what did you think was going to happen when millions of people were flooding across the southern border? Did you just think, and maybe you did, and maybe you just thought hey, they're all going to get here and be able to live their lives and there's going to be no consequences. But Donald Trump was saying all along, if he got reelected, what he would do. And even Bernie Sanders came out and criticized Democrats a couple days ago and said, you don't have a country without a border. And Democrats have to own that they really fell short. And if even Bernie Sanders can acknowledge that, I mean, how ideologically driven do you have to be not to see that and not to maybe blame Biden for putting these illegal immigrants, as much as it's their own responsibility? But he basically opened his arms and come one, come all, and set them up with this belief that they'd be able to stay here and it wouldn't be a big deal. And now they're being sent back unceremoniously, and everybody's mad at Trump. No, there's a lot of anger that should go around here. So if you want to watch that full interview with Allie Bradley of News Nation, sign up to become a subscriber, undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com. Just click on the banner that says support the show. You can catch up on this episode and other great episodes of Sundays with Subscribers, where we do in-depth interviews on important topics such as this one. Okay, Elmo. What even, I mean, I don't want to have your kids leave the room, but Elmo is actually run by a person. It's a puppet, So I guess that somebody's pulling Elmo's strings, and I don't know if it's the person who runs Elmo, that really hates Jewish people, but something went wrong here. So you've probably seen this. This is the headline from Rolling Stone. Hacked Elmo X account shares anti-Semitic posts, calls Trump Netanyahu's puppet. Okay, it says someone pretending to be the beloved Sesame Street character posted, I love how they have to say that. Someone pretending to be Elmo. Wait, you mean it wasn't Elmo with his furry red fingers who was up there just typing about Hitler on X? Someone pretending to be the beloved Sesame Street character posted 6 tweets taking aim at Jewish people and the U.S. president. All right, I'll read a couple of them, I guess. Again, from the official Elmo account. Elmo says all Jews should die. F Jews, Donald Trump is Netanyahu's puppet because he's in the... I can't do an Elmo. Because he's in the Epstein files. Jews control the world and need to be exterminated. I mean, oh my God. Oh my God. And it just got worse from there. So, Sesame Street characterizes this as a hack. I don't believe that, but it says a spokesperson for Sesame Workshop confirmed that the account was hacked, saying Elmo's X account was compromised today by an unknown hacker who posted disgusting messages, including anti-Semitic and racist posts. She said in a statement, "We are working to restore full control of the account." No. This was a rogue employee. Let's be honest. Don't you think? Come on. Some genius hacker decides it's Elmo's account they're going to go after.
Right.
I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
Nah, I think you're right.
But I think it's probably some unhinged employee. But then the other day, Grok went nuts and was praising Hitler. So maybe Grok, AI, artificial intelligence, as Kamala says, AI actually is 2 words, stands for artificial intelligence. You remember when she was giving a speech on AI and that was her big revelation? AI, it's 2 words, artificial intelligence. Maybe Grok, because it went full Hitler, taught itself to hack into accounts like Elmo's, and then that was Grok.
Oh, maybe.
Quite possible.
I don't know. I've been getting into Chat GPT now.
Oh,
it's so interesting.
I just suck at it.
So fast.
Like, I can never really get what I want out of it. I'm not good at kind of manipulating it. Maybe I need to work on my prompts. I don't know.
I just like testing it, see how fast it can do something.
Yeah, it is fascinating.
It's pretty wild. One of my child cousin says he uses it to write papers, and I was like, that is terrible.
Yeah. You're not gonna get ahead.
It's pretty wild how fast it does stuff like that.
Well, it's funny. So Daryl, who does our like social media and tech, he's very tech savvy, obviously. And he sent me an email once, and I've known Daryl since he was like 19 years old. I mean, I've known Daryl for years. And he sends me this email, and it's very formal. Brandi, comma. Like, and it was in a response to some very casual thing I sent him. And I go, very formal email response there. And he laughs. He says, LOL, AI. So it was like an AI response.
He's using AI to email.
Well, I guess, but I was like, I knew it wasn't him. I was like, this is suspicious.
That is
anyway.
Funny.
Okay, we'll get to our daily subscriber show poll coming up.
Elmo. Leave
Poor
Elmo.
Elmo. Leave Elmo out of it, you know? Leave Elmo out of it. Sorry, we're going long today. Sorry, not sorry. First, we got a new comment from a viewer after taking the First Mark challenge. Amy said, my husband contacted First Mark and they were super helpful. Our current insurance is our best bet for now, but we're glad we contacted them to confirm. Thanks for the recommendation. And we hear this a lot from people who take the First Mark challenge, that First Mark looks into their current insurance and actually says, hey, we can't beat that. And so you should stick with your insurance. If anything changes in the future, you know, come back to us. But I think that's really the sign of an honest company, and that they're not just going to take your business because they want to take your business. They want to do what's best for you. So if that means turning your business away, that's what they're going to do. And Amy's an example of that, but she still appreciated the knowledge. And then you leave armed with the information that you do have the best insurance for your needs at the best price. And then we hear from other undivided viewers and listeners who say they take the First Mark challenge and First Mark saves them thousands. Like Jacob says he saved $2,000 a year for the family's cars, $600 on their home. I mean, who couldn't use an extra $2,600 a year and not just flush it down the toilet for insurance premiums? So firstmarkinsurance.com, firstmarkinsurance.com. Take the First Mark challenge today. You might just become a member of the First Mark family like me and so many other undivided viewers and listeners. firstmarkinsurance.com. Okay, our daily subscriber show poll today had to do with that exclusive report on Pierce County using government resources to fund Tacoma Pride. I asked you guys on Patreon, Locals, and X. Another bonus of being a subscriber, you get to participate in our daily subscriber show poll. Do you believe there is any legitimate use for taxpayer funds to support LGBTQ plus events? Nicole, can you think of any legitimate?
Don't use taxpayers to pay for any events. No.
Because there's so many nonprofits. If there's an event worth having, a nonprofit will pay for it.
Yes.
Or
Exactly.
a corporation. You get corporate sponsors. They had corporate sponsors. Why does the government need to pay for that?
I don't understand it.
So most of you are saying no. Brian says police are a welcome sight at Pride events. So I'm answering yes. Aside from that, it's improper use of taxpayer money. I don't know. I feel two ways about police being there. Like if they're there on their own time, it's just that like in Seattle, I see police in the Pride parade. I'm like, hey, we got a city to patrol and you're down 600 cops. Like, let's get to the beat. Get on the beat, okay? I don't need you marching the Pride parade or any other parade for that matter. Bill Swick, no more than there should be funds for straight people. I do not think they have any need. They are not picked on or defamed and have no special equity. Treat everyone the same. That's it. Robin says taxpayer money should not go to fund one specific group unless they're going to fund all groups. And as far left as Washington government leaders are, where will it stop? There is no common sense and common ground. So the simple answer is no to all. Let's see. Yeah, and HTA says state money shouldn't be spent on anyone, any who you are attracted to events. Yes. And you can imagine the outrage if money was used on a straight pride parade. Which I would be opposed to as well. Dan says, Brandi, they do see it as non-political. Yeah, and that's the unfortunate part, is this is like, they don't see this as a political issue that reasonable people can disagree on. And that's crazy to me, because how do you change that mindset?
But I wouldn't want it spent on, I don't know, Scandinavian Heritage Parade. I wouldn't want it spent on Irish Heritage Parade or
100%,
any other
100%
parade.
Right.
Like,
there are groups that will fund that.
Go have fun, but you have to spend your own money to have fun.
Right. Like you're taking money out of my paycheck for parades?
No.
I don't care what the parade is. Let's see. Todd kind of agrees. He says, I voted no, but I also feel we should move away from taxpayer funded events. However, I will argue the yes for discussion's sake. Governments often fund cultural or community events to promote inclusivity and social cohesion. LGBTQ plus events can serve a similar purpose by fostering acceptance and reducing marginalization of groups that face documented discrimination. Pride events often generate significant local revenue, so this might be maybe the only argument I can get behind. If taxpayer funds are used to seed such events, the economic return could justify the investment, similar to funding other major public festivals. So maybe there's an argument there, like, hey, there's going to be 10,000 people down in the park. It's going to help. Nicole's like, nope. She's rolling her eyes over there. It's going to help businesses.
Show me the receipts if that's the case. Show me who's benefiting from it. Maybe I
have no doubt.
Parking. I don't know.
Because the businesses. I have no doubt that if you have 10,000 people in a park, the businesses around there are going to have experience a boost in business for the day. No doubt. I don't think you can argue against that. But then the businesses can fund it. Then the business community, the Chamber of Commerce, whatever it is. Again, I don't believe it has to be taxpayer funds. However, Todd, your point is well taken. All right, we'll get to subscriber comments in our closing sanity check, which I've been laughing about for 24 hours straight. First, if your retirement portfolio was a sports team, how did it perform in the first half of 2025? Is your advisor making any halftime adjustments based on its performance in the first 6 months of the year? If not, or if the answer is I have no clue, maybe you should attend Zach Abraham's halftime webinar coming up Thursday, July 24th. This is not going to be a rah-rah speech. It's going to be a straight-up X's and O's discussion on global unrest affecting the market, perspective on the outlook for the second half of 2025, plus a full reveal of how Bulwark is always, constantly looking for opportunities to lower risk, lower cost, give your retirement as much upside as possible. Hear directly from Zach Abraham of Bulwark Capital as he shares insights in this free halftime webinar Thursday, July 24th. Register right now. Well, not right now. Wait till the show's done and then register at knowyourriskpodcast.com, unless you can multitask. Knowyourriskpodcast.com. And if you can't make the webinar, at least get a second opinion on your retirement. It's totally free. Schedule your Know Your Risk portfolio review also at knowyourriskpodcast.com. Okay, let's get to some comments, shall we? Cynthia Martin, $5 super chat. This is such a disgusting abuse of power by the judicial system. If our forefathers saw what's going on here, they would roll over in their graves. This amount of stupidity leaves me speechless. Gonna have to agree there. And you typed that in all caps, so I understood how angry you were. Papa Woody says, who's the judge? Gosh, that's a good... Oh, Snohomish County Judge Joseph Wilson. Thanks. Nicole put it in there for me. I was like, we'll have to look that up.
Miranda.
Oh, wow, Miranda. Great job. Yeah. Snohomish County Judge Joseph Wilson was the judge. It's not the same judge for Tracy. Tracy has a different judge who I'm told is more sane.
Oh.
But, so maybe she wants a bench trial instead of a jury trial.
But it was a jury.
I know, but still that judge made all those decisions about what was admissible and what wasn't. Salty said, so they allowed him in without a mask and then... This is such a good point. I haven't even thought of this. So they allowed him in without a mask and then they called the police? That sounds like entrapment to me.
Oh, entrapment. I didn't think about that.
Yeah,
but
why
yes,
would
I
they?
assumed it was somebody different that called the police and let him in. I'm sure the people at the front desk were like, yeah, get in here. It's fine. And then, the auditor walked by and was like,
and the auditor is a Republican.
Or I'm not the auditor, but the, who was it?
Yeah, the auditor. The auditor who made the mask mandate is a Republican.
Yes.
Yeah, crazy.
That we had a sign.
Yeah. Night Wolf. This is scary crap. Imagine being prosecuted for not wearing a mask at the grocery store. This will set a precedent if allowed to stand. And then, who gets to make... so private businesses have a right to make a mask mandate. Yes. Private businesses have a right to refuse service for any reason. They could just not like the shirt you're wearing and be like, get out. So that's a much different situation than the government and something as important as as being able to watch the election process. And you have a rule that, let's be honest, one side of the political aisle is far less likely to follow. So then they're disenfranchised in the election observing situation. All right. On the Pierce County executive misusing his official email, Hello Watermelon says, do you sign it in blood? Yeah, you got to sign this trans agenda pact with blood.
That's the thing, is that they're not, they make you... You're making deals with the devil here. So I'm sure the auditor is, was threatened by somebody. I mean, they're mostly Democrats over there. So I'm sure somebody was threatened and then you make this deal with the devil. Like, that's what you're doing over here. And somebody asked why that is in Snohomish, why it's a Snohomish County judge. And it's because they had to take it out of Island County.
Yeah. So Tim Hazelo has a family member who works in the Island County court. Right. So all the judges there recused themselves. So they had to bring in an outside judge. I don't know. I don't think the same will be true with Tracy. I'm not sure. But Hello Watermelon on the trans thing. Do you sign it with blood? Brian E. Judicial branch is supposed to be independent of the two political branches. This makes the judicial branch dependent on at least one, if not both political branches. No independence, no justice. Talking about these judges who may or may not have signed this pledge. On the Portland homeless man, which again, that video is epic, who is trying to calculate the money that's actually being spent on him. Matthew Cook, and that's why they call it the homeless industrial complex. Susan says, he's like, where's my share? You could tell he's like, wait, what? Where's that money? I could use that money.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I had pulled, we didn't get to it, but the administrative cost for most of them was just insane. I had it
administrative costs like per homeless person.
Per homeless, or no, the funds that come out of that for administrative fees. And
let me guess. You find it. Okay. I'll read the rest of the comments. I'm gonna guess that it is 3 out of 700 million that you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess it's $300 million. Is administrative.
So it's funny the way they break it down. So it's, if you go central administrative and operations, then it's like almost 50 million. And then if you like one step up, they're like, oh, system access and assessment. Well, that's administrative too. Yeah. Wouldn't you call that? Yes. So that's another 64. And then housing placement and retention, not the housing, just the housing placement.
Administrative.
Administrative again. And then supportive housing. is 219, and safety on the streets is 251.
Well, because I also include
all of those are
in the administrative cost, I include employees.
Right.
So if that money is funding a worker who's trying to get people into affordable housing, manning affordable housing, working in some safety capacity, that's administrative.
Yep.
So it's just crazy. It's just nuts.
wild. So yeah, you're pretty close with pretty close, like 250, 270.
Wild. On the media coverage of the pot farm raid, Robespierre says, time and time again, I hear about the illegals and nothing about the scumbag employers profiting from their labor. Yeah, and this pot farm came out and said, we don't employ illegal labor or children. Okay, well, you got some explaining to do. You've been smoking too much of your own supply. You never get high on your own supply. Let's see, from Facebook, Kit Oodles, there are the children of illegals who paid to cross with the cartel. These are the children of the illegals who paid to cross with the cartel. These crossings are paid for either with cash or future work. So you don't think those teens, somebody's taking a cut of their pay to pay off? This happens a lot with the bus with salons, for instance, where you have Asian women who've been brought over under false pretenses, and then their pay goes to whoever, and they never pay it off. They never pay off their debt. Right. So it's just crazy.
Trafficking.
All right. On our interview with News Nation's Ali Bradley, Charlie K., no consistency in enforcing our laws created this mess. Right. And if the Democrats want to argue, get rid of the law. Don't make it let people come in illegally. They can argue that, but they know that that's a losing message and a stupid idea. But that's essentially what they're arguing, right? Mm-hmm. When they say don't arrest these people, so you're just saying there should be no punishment for coming into the country illegally. So if that's what you're saying, then you don't believe we should have any laws governing how people enter our country. And that's crazy. Sense. That's crazy. That's nuts. On WTF happened to Elmo, Seabass 22. Elmo would never say that. Well, I don't know. Let's see. Greg Anderson, Elmo's issues are the very reason PBS is being defunded. Trump predicted this. He knew if we keep giving money to PBS, Elmo's going to turn into a neo-Nazi and all this stuff. Just crazy. Two more quick super chats. Two Ladies Midwest Adventures sending some support. Best to you all. Thank you. Cynthia on the all caps comment, I'll never do sugar or a caffeine high ever again. That's all right. We're rolling on caffeine here on the show too. Yeah. Because we're in 32 minutes overtime. Is there really a time frame for the show anymore? Really. Is there really? I don't think so. But with that, all good things must come to an end. Let's get to our closing sanity check. All right, we've got a gem here from Debbie Wasserman Schultz. Of course, you have all these Democratic members of Congress and lawmakers who are still losing it over Alligator Alcatraz, the detention facility in the Florida Keys where you have individuals who are being held awaiting deportation. And she got a firsthand look at what's happening there and wanted to talk to us about the horrible, unthinkable place that these men have to brush their teeth.
They essentially drink, they get their drinking water and they brush their teeth where they poop in the same unit.
Yeah, it's called a bathroom. I hate to break it to you. I don't know where you brush your teeth, but I'm guilty that I brush my teeth where I go to the bathroom, in the bathroom. So, I don't know what else you want me to say about that. That has been our closing sanity check. That has been today's episode of Undivided. Thank you for being here. Wow, what a great show today. Right? Thank you. I was going to say, don't make me be the only one saying that I did a good job. Great job, everyone. If you'd like to support our show, we definitely are always looking to add paid subscribers. It helps fund the show and its existence. You can sign up, go to undividedpod.com, undividedpod.com, and you just click on the banner that says support the show for $5, and it'll take you right there. And we sure would appreciate it. Until then, got a lot more great stuff coming up for you this week on Undivided. Go out there, speak truth, sanity, common sense, and we'll see you tomorrow.